This is the Subcommittee on International Human Rights of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. This is meeting number 41.
Being here before, the headset is how you'll be using your translation today. Le canal 1, c'est l'anglais.
Channel 1 is English, Channel 2 French, and Channel 3 Korean.
Turn to our witnesses, I have a few organizational matters to take care of. The first one is regarding next Tuesday's meeting. I have spoken to a few of the members of the committee, not all of you, to suggest that next Tuesday we invite a visiting minister. The Pakistani Minister of Minorities is in Canada and is willing to attend as a witness if we are willing to have him. So that is a suggestion from me. You don't have to accept it, but I'll just ask, is that acceptable to the subcommittee?
Would the Pakistan Minister of Minorities be speaking on our study? Because we are doing a study that includes also Pakistan.
Yes. Yes. So, well, we only with relation to his own country, of course, but yes.
But on the issue of human rights.
Yes, yes, that's right.
He's not going to be speaking about specific minority rights and some of the issues that we have.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, fine.
Okay, that's that. Is there a consensus then, Madame?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am in agreement with that, but perhaps we could also have unanimous consent to set aside time to discuss future committee business. I think things are moving really quickly, and we're a bit confused as to what will be occurring for the next topics.
Okay. Well,
are we talking about the meeting?
Perhaps well, I've suggested the idea of actually setting aside a separate time to have, outside of our normal schedule to do that. You may recall I mentioned that before the Christmas break. But we could actually set aside a meeting for that if we chose.
Okay. No, I was just concerned that it would take up time from when the minister from Pakistan was here. But if it's a separate meeting, I'm fine with that.
So let's make sure. I'll ask: is there an agreement to having a separate meeting? Would we try to find a time that's convenient for everybody? Everybody's cool with that? Okay. All right. So we'll do that. I'll get back to you all and suggest a time. The next thing I want to bring up is very briefly. Mr. De Volen, who is sitting with us today, has a motion that is coming before the House, scheduled to come shortly, on the subject of North Korean refugees. I'm going to ask the clerk to circulate that just so you can all take a look at it. That's just for your advice. And finally, our researcher has prepared, or analyst, I should say, some information regarding the situation with sexual minorities in Uganda, and in particular regarding the recent murder of Mr. David Kato in Uganda. That will also be circulated. I'm not inviting discussion on that one. I'm just alerting you that it will be passed around because that is something that is of relevance to a committee that we are doing right now. That business being dealt with, I want now to turn to today's witnesses. At the head, we have Dr. Norbert Volatsen and Mr. Kyung-bi Lee. And again, Ms. Kim is back today. So today the two witnesses will be Mr. Volatsen, or rather Dr. Volatsen, and Mr. Lee. The proposal schedule they've put forward is that Mr. Volatsen will speak first for 15 minutes on the subject of induced starvation. After that, Mr. Lee will speak on he has a petition for a parliamentary resolution. So let's begin with Dr. Volatsen then, please.
Honorable Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. First of all, I would like to apologize for my maybe poor German physician pronunciation. Hopefully you can understand. You got a lot of material there in your packages, and you can see this is not a garage sale like I just was asked, but it's my documents and my evidence. I would like to show it to you, and I have so much to tell, but limited time, therefore I will speed up. I'm a German emergency doctor. I'm a physician by training. I lived in North Korea for 1.5 years. I was a member of Kappa Namur, German emergency doctors, and we took care for 5 different hospitals, 10 orphanages, and several hundred kindergarten. When I entered North Korea, I experienced nothing. No trees anymore, no birds, no rice, no meat, only a broken, failed state with starving people. When you think about hunger, most of you think about hunger in Africa. It's like in Africa, but it's cold outside, like here in Canada right now. And that will kill the people in North Korea. The coldness in winter and no input, no calories, no heating system. In summer, there's diarrhea because of all the bad water, contamination all over, and all the people are dying because of spreading infections. The condition in the hospital, the first Korean word I learned was 없습니다. Nothing. We don't have nothing. It's not available. Imagine a hospital without any running water. Imagine a hospital without any heating system. And it's as cold as outside right now here in Canada. Imagine a hospital without any soap, no medicine, and no patients. Normally all those buildings were empty. When I came there were no patients. What shall they do there? Why shall they go to such a hospital when there is no medicine? My main medical diagnosis in North Korea was, okay, starvation, no medicine, tuberculosis and all the spreading disease, but my main observation as a medical doctor, as a general physician by training in Germany was there is depression. All the people were looking fed up. They were looking exhausted. No future, no hope for any change, drawing propaganda from early daytime until the evening, parade after parade. They were fed up, and there's a lot of alcoholism. There's a lot of despair, and no hope for any change. As a German, it was very convenient for me in North Korea because I could speak in German without any official translator. There are many, many North Koreans who studied in former East Germany. They were trained in East Germany. North Korean doctors with an East German accent, very funny. A professor at the university. I could speak in German, sometimes in secret, in the evening, after some glasses of beer or soju. They were quite outspoken about the government. And guess what they told me? They don't like Kim Jong-il. They know that it's mainly the fault of Kim Jong-il that there is no medicine, that there is no water, that there is no food. As a medical doctor, it's quite easy to get closer to the people. They always need help. They need assistance, they need medicine, they need friendship. I tried to be different. I didn't want to be the snobby Westerner who knows better, especially the Germans. I didn't want to be a stranger. I wanted to make real friendship. There was a huge opportunity to make a real friendship. Because North Korean hospitals lack everything, there's no sophisticated medicine, there is no amputation set or whatever. They do not have any treatment for burned patients. Once there came a burned patient, a factory worker burned by molten iron. He came into the hospital, rushed into the hospital, and of course there was no treatment. And he was just hidden in a room. Kibun. The North Koreans didn't want us to see that they couldn't treat him. They were ashamed. So I rushed into the room and we wanted to do something. Of course, we gave all our Western assistance. But what the North Koreans are doing in that case is skin graft. They will donate their own skin. So the unbelievable scenario, the whole hospital, including the doctors, all the assistants, the nurses, they all lined up in order to donate their skin. I thought, hey, that's an opportunity to create real friendship. Let's create a patchwork North Korean with some Western skin and North Korean skin. So my colleague and I, we also donated our skin. Of course, it was a little bit bloody procedure, no real disinfection, no real anesthesia, but we were recognized as friends. 1 week later, we were asked to do it again. Whoops. The whole hospital lined up, everybody was there, we did it again, and there was state television. Now comes the spin. North Korean spin. There was state media, and then there was the story, 2 foreigners donated their skin, wow, what an act, in order to show their gratitude to Kim Jong-il. It was something like a tribute. That was the first time that I recognized North Korean propaganda style. Okay, don't worry, forget about it. We were rewarded. 1 month later, we were awarded the so-called North Korean Friendship Medal. High honor, the first 2 foreigners ever who got this high honor. I do not care. I'm not the guy who's carrying around this like that. So I was more interested in this one. This is a North Korean, I call it VIP passport. It simply says that I got the Friendship Medal. Together, I got a driving license. Wow. You know about North Korea. Normally, there's a guide, a minder, a person who will take care for you, a driver. You're never supposed to go to any place. I took my chance, never asked stupid questions in North Korea, I learned. I took my passport, and I went to Nampo and Wonsan. Of course, there was a police stop, there were soldiers on the road, don't go. And I tried, I showed this. And imagine what happened. As soon as they saw this, Kapchida, go through, it worked. My colleagues told me it will work. They were from East Germany. They knew about miners and policemen, soldiers, that they will never report to one another when there's some incident. So I maybe abused my possibilities. I walked around, I took a bicycle, I took the subway in Pyongyang, and I drove my car all over North Korea, and I made so many observations. Together with my Friendship Medal, I was invited to many, many facilities, to the guest house of Kim Jong-il, to the military parades. I met high official North Koreans. I got the normal picture of North Korea. I realized that there is an elite in Pyongyang, that there's Japanese sushi, Russian caviar, French champagne for the elite in Pyongyang. I realized that there is Mercedes-Benz in Pyongyang, a lot of them. I felt quite home in Pyongyang sometimes. And I realized that there are 2 different worlds in Pyongyang. When I came to the countryside, I saw that there was children starving in the hospitals, lying there without any food, without any medicine, and in a condition that moved my heart. So I was upset, and I thought I have to change my attitude maybe. You can stay in North Korea for 10 years and you will not get the real picture. Normally you are guided around and there are all the monuments and all the official tours, and then you will go to this monument and there will be staged things. All the children are lined up, even a little bit of makeup and some lipstick, and then they are cheering, thank you, kamsahamnida, for the food donation. I wondered, is this the real picture? Because when you're an emergency doctor, sometimes there are emergency cases, and you have to rush into an hospital with the bloody victim of any accident on your back. So I rushed into the hospital, and then there was no medicine anymore. There was no food. We just donated the other day or the week before. I wondered, what's going on here? Where's all the international aid, the German aid, the Canadian aid, the American aid, with American flags still on the bag, on it? Where is it? Where has it gone? My colleagues They told me, Norbert, you are an idiot. And they were right. Norbert, you are so naive. My colleagues, they were from former East Germany. They told me that I never experienced, me from West Germany, and that I maybe never experienced corruption. A communist state where everybody is going to look for his own. He must, in order to survive. They told me that this is, like in East Germany, a mafia-style society. That there are starving children in the countryside, and the elite in Pyongyang, in this showcase city, is enjoying a nice lifestyle. And I went in order to prove it. I went to the black market. I saw rice bags sold there with the American flag still on it. I saw our medicine sold in a hotel. I saw pullovers we donated, German donation to the kindergartens. I saw these pullovers sold in a diplomatic shop. As a physician, you are living there in Pyongyang in the international community. You're living in the diplomatic compound, and there are many, many colleagues of yours from WFP, from the World Food Program, World Health Program, from other organizations. And I, as a physician, I'm a general physician, but my hobby, so to say, was psychological advice. What happened in Pyongyang was I was often asked for psychological advice. Some of my colleagues from WFP or the World Food Program asked me when they were in trouble to get help. There was one guy who wanted to commit suicide because he couldn't stand it anymore, that something is going wrong in this country with the food donation, and he was not able to tell his head office, otherwise he will get in trouble. There was one member of ACF, that's a French organization. She wanted to quit because a milk kitchen in the north of North Korea was not able to donate milk to the ordinary people because it was forbidden by the government, because those people in the northern part there, they were not obedient anymore. So she eyewitnessed an uprising. She was not allowed to speak out about this in front of journalists, for example, to speak out in front of her office back in Paris. So I was a psychological advisor for some of those people who simply collapsed. They had a nervous breakdown because they couldn't stand it anymore, to lie to their head office, to lie to the world by what they were doing there. Only then I realized that after 1.5 years, only then I realized that Kim Jong-il is really using food as a weapon against his own people. So I changed totally my attitude. I thought I have to inform the world about this. I have to take the pictures. I moved around. I took a video. It's also included in your package. I took all those pictures in these books. And I invited some journalists for a private tour. When Ms. Albright was in town in North Korea in 2000, she was accompanied by so many journalists, CNN, BBC, whatever. So I invited them for a private tour. I have my driving license, why not? 12 of them, and I guided them around. And I showed them the Pyongyang Mrs. Albright didn't see. That was the headline of the article next day in the Washington Post. So that was quite an offense for the North Korean authorities. I was expelled. I was threatened to get expelled immediately, but I was saved by a protest of my head office, of the German Foreign Ministry. So I was allowed to stay. I documented all what happened then in many, many diaries. I took many pictures. I took all the video. And I wrote a protest, a statement of humanitarian principles. I gave it to Tony Hall, a US congressman, when he was in town. The next week, I found a dead soldier on the middle of the road. He was malnourished, maybe 17, 18 years old. He was looking like a 10-year-old boy. He was beaten. I'm not an expert for torture. I'm a general physician. But my colleague from East Germany, former East Germany, she was a member of Amnesty International. She took care for long-term prisoners in Bautzen, in East German prison camp. She was. And she told me, Norbert, look, here are cigarette burns. Here he was beaten. Here he was whipped. I wanted to take, I'm naive, I'm an idiot. I wanted to take a picture, and I was immediately not arrested, but friendly, taken beside, and then my camera was confiscated. Of course, the film was eliminated, and that was the end of my friendship. I was expelled. In December 2000, I was expelled. Instead of going home, doing business like usual, I went to South Korea. I gave interviews, I wrote 4 books so far, and I gave interviews to the journalists, I gave lectures. I wanted to inform the world, mainly the South Korean students, the younger generation, the churches. But as a German, of course, I also know about German history and the impact of refugees. I thought, maybe I have to get the real picture. Maybe I have to go to China. I heard about North Korean refugees. When I was inside North Korea, I never had any idea about refugees. Of course, I never was allowed to go to any concentration camps like Ms. Kim was in. So I had no idea. I was naive. I was invited by some activists to go to China, to the Chinese-North Korean border. There I met many, many refugees. I interviewed them. Mainly I took medical care, of course, but I also spoke to them. I interviewed them via translator. I went to Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Thailand. I gave refugee assistance. More and more, I stayed at least 7 years in South Korea and Southeast Asia in order to take care for the people. I realized that I really do not know nothing in North Korea. Inside North Korea, you cannot get the real picture. You have to have witnesses like Mrs. Kim. I learned about the power of the media, too. I believe in publicity stunts. Therefore, we decided, how can we inform the world? You know about nowadays media, they are in need for a breaking story. So we decided to storm some Western embassies. It worked out with the East German refugees in Prague and Hungary, so maybe it also will work out for the North Koreans. So we stormed the Spanish embassy in Beijing with 27 refugees in front of CNN. Maybe it worked. I went to the Tumen River. I saw all these dead corpses in the river. I saw people who were shot there at the border. I was shocked again, and more I realized that North Korea is a failed state, is led by a mafia clan, and you know all about German history. We Germans were responsible for Auschwitz, Treblinka, Dachau. Whenever I'm in Washington in the Holocaust Museum, I'm ashamed that I'm a German, and hopefully nobody will recognize my German accent when their students are behind. And after Dachau, Treblinka, Auschwitz, we Germans told the whole world, never again. But it happens again, right now. Ms. Kim was in there. We Germans were accused that we failed to act, to speak up, to speak out about the atrocities going on in Germany with the Jews. So I have to talk about the real picture in North Korea. I have to talk about induced starvation, about crimes against humanity, the killing fields of today. I will even call it the unknown genocide, because Kim Jong-un is using food as a weapon against his own people. I can prove that. And I took these images in a North Korean children's hospital. These are not pictures from Auschwitz or Treblinka. This is the reality in North Korea nowadays, in a North Korean children's hospital. And you can only imagine, when those are the children in a children's hospital, how it might look in Ms. Kim's institution, in the concentration camps. Those children, they were looking so sad, so hopeless. And what shall I do? I'm a medical doctor. Should I give some antidepressiva, some injection, so that they will smile again? No, I can't. I have to take a political mandate. I have to change something. And therefore, I'm standing here in front of you. Because my own country, Germany, unfortunately, does not take so much care. Maybe they even simply do not know about North Korea. I'm here in Canada, and I beg you, the people of Canada and the politicians, to do something. The children in North Korea are waiting for your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wollertson. Mr. Lee, please.
My name is Kyung-B Lee. As representative of the Council for Human Rights in North Korea, an independent, non-profit, non-partisan organization located in Toronto, I express my sincere thanks to the members of the Subcommittee for International Human Rights for allowing me the opportunity to present this verbal petition. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the honorable members of the committee. Today, and the day before yesterday, Dr. Wollertson and Mrs. Kim made testimonies on the horrendous situation that they experienced and I witnessed at firsthand in North Korea. The worst of the worst, as the Washington-based Freedom House described. Simply put, the so-called Democratic People's Republic Korea is a failed and failing state in that it is not only unable but also unwilling to feed and protect its own people. It is also a rogue state in that internally it is perpetrating crimes against its own people and externally engaging in terrors and terror-sponsoring activities, committing acts of aggression, and developing weapons of mass destruction, including nuclear weapons and long-range missiles, threatening regional and world peace. In other words, North Korea is no longer a state in terms of morality and human security. It has lost the statehood. It is still a state, though, militarily and ideologically, with its military-first policy and Juche ideology. In dealing with North Korean issue, the international community is more concerned about security issue than human rights issue. Human rights issue is rather overshadowed, I would say, by the security issue. Rightly so, perhaps, because we tend to take care of our own national or regional security first, before we think of the human security of others. History tells us that nations that respect the rights of their citizens are less likely to turn to belligerence as a first resort, and vice versa. As J. Lefkowitz, the former special envoy for human rights in North Korea under the Bush administration, said, I quote, "With Hitler, Stalin, and others, the march of tyranny at home was an antecedent to international aggression. On the other hand, no true democracies who value freedom and human rights have ever gone to war with each other." The relationship between Canada and the United States is a good example, I think. We Canadians don't feel threatened by the United States, our neighbor, that has perhaps hundreds or thousands of weapons of mass destruction, because the two countries share the same value, that is, freedom, human rights, and democracy. In other words, I quote him again, focusing on human rights goes far beyond being a moral imperative. It is a practical means to deal with the security issue as well. unquote. I understand that our Canada has done a lot for human rights in North Korea, multilaterally and bilaterally, such as co-sponsoring of the UN resolution, participation in the Universal Periodic Review, and raising the issue on the ambassadorial levels. Today, I want a petition based on the testimonies made and further studies to be made if necessary, and on behalf of the Korean Canadian community in Toronto, that Canada do more and further. Specifically, I want to petition this subcommittee to move a parliamentary resolution on the situation of human rights of North Koreans. Canada has a moral obligation to do so, I think, as an international leader in human rights and as a vigorous defender of freedom, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, home and abroad. Some 60 years ago, Canada volunteered in the Korean War in order to defend the same value. And the mission hasn't been finished just yet, in a sense that the northern part of the Korean Peninsula is still not free, not democratized. North Korea usually snubs a UN resolution, calling it a US-led political plot to topple the so-called highly respected our-style socialist system. Under the circumstances, a Canadian resolution, if moved and passed by the Parliament of Canada, that has no direct military interest in the Korean Peninsula, would produce a great impact to the international community and serve as a huge pressure to the North Korean regime. As to the contents of such a resolution, we have, for reference, resolutions the UN General Assembly adopted, recommendations Canada urged at the Universal Periodic Review, recommendations the former UN Special Rapporteur advised, recommendations the International Parliamentarians Coalition for North Korean Refugees and Human Rights adopted, 3 private members' motions moved by Mr. Barry DeBolin, Honorable Judith Scroll, and Mr. Peter Julian, and 2 resolutions our Council adopted at the North Korea Human Rights Forum 2 years ago, and our petition to the Parliament for dismantlement of North Korean gulags. I hope that all these resolutions, recommendations, and petitions are reflected and incorporated into the parliamentary resolution, hopefully to be moved by this subcommittee. We, the Council for Human Rights in North Korea, will be very pleased to contribute to the drafting of such resolution, if invited, by making a written submission within a week or so. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and honorable members of the committee. Thank you.
All right, we have time for 5-minute rounds of questions and answers. I encourage members to remember that 5 minutes includes the answers, so it's always good to have a concise question. Before we do that, however, I just want to alert Dr. Volotson. Normally when people present materials, as you were doing today at the committee, we request that they table those materials. So if it would be possible for our clerk to contact you after this is over and arrange to get copies of those photographs, we would be very grateful. That can then go into the record of the committee. All right, let's turn then first to Mr. Silva.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to begin by thanking Dr. Willister and Mr. Lee for being here, and again, Madam Kim, who we heard the testimony last Tuesday, and I think all of us were very moved by her testimony, as we are here today continue on this issue. We want to once again thank the witness for shining a light on a very dark place, in a hermit place that, as Dr. Williston said, that very few of us know what's happening down there. And it's intentional why we don't know, because the government does not want to see let us know the reality, but also doesn't want its people to also know the reality. And I am struck by the testimony and the sheer magnitude of the suffering of the Korean people, and my heart goes out to them. And we here obviously want to know what we can do, but also at the same time I want to hear from either yourself or from Mr. Lee a perspective, because you know more about what's happening there than we do. We see in the last little while what's taking place in the Middle East, where the people are rising up against dictators. And I wanted to know, is there a sense of in Korea that you know, of sort of a people's revolution possibly coming up? Is there any type of a group of dissent that you sort of felt there, that people would rise up against this totalitarian regime?
Once, in the middle of '99, I was standing in front of the subway in Pyongyang, and there was a mass performance. All the soldiers, and it was whatever, birthday of Kim Il-sung, or there are so many festivities in Pyongyang. So all the people lined up, and thousands of people. Right after midnight, they wanted to go home. It was a rush. They all were fed up, this long military parade and cheering, orchestrated, so nobody wanted to stay any longer. So the people were pushing forward, let's go home, and then there was, of course, order. Policemen and subway personnel, and out of the sudden, there was some fights, fists and pushing further, and then some shouts, and then the first bloody nose. And I am a medical doctor in the middle of this. I wanted to help and jump, old lady falling down, and then there was a real, I never had this experience. I was feeling maybe like today in Egypt, in the middle of the mob, like Mr. Anderson Cooper here in the middle of the square. It was like the beginning of the revolution. There were people fighting the policemen. They couldn't stop them anymore. They wanted to go to the subway. They wanted to go home. And there were soldiers, of course, coming in. And the people didn't care. They ripped off the uniforms, got the whatever knife and some, not machine guns, of course. It happened 5 minutes later. Then there were the guys with the machine guns. And then there was order, of course. But that was my experience. It can happen in North Korea anytime. There are people who are angry about the government. There are people who are very well aware about you. They know about the outside world. They are listening to radios. Whenever my interpreter came into our office, the first he asked, do you have some German newspaper? Can we listen to BBC or CNN or whatever in the Voice of America in the morning? Secretly. But he wanted to get the information. And guess what? Once I was invited here to those fashionable dinner parties, and there was one high-ranking official, I forgot his name, he was sitting there, and he told us, of course we know we have to change, we have to get reform, there's economics and so on, but because of the boycott of the foreigners, we cannot, but there is, you know what, there is one real natural disaster, and the North Koreans are always talking about natural disaster, flooding, drought, whatever. There's one real natural disaster, and that we can't stop. And then he looked behind him, and you know, in every North Korean room, there are two portraits, one of Kim Il-sung, the founder, and one of Kim Jong-il. And he looked at those pictures, and this natural disaster we can't stop. That was his comment on the situation, high official person. There are some people, and as I told you, when they were drunken in the evening, a little bit of soju, a little bit of whiskey, a little bit of beer, they were quite outspoken. They told me in German language that they dislike Kim Jong-il, that they hate him, that they know that he is responsible, that they think he is a spoiled, rotten playboy, and he does not deserve to be the leader of the state. They think he is responsible, and I can give you the guarantee, you will see the same pictures in Egypt, like in Egypt, one day in Pyongyang. I'm absolutely sure about that. But you have to trigger it. They need the information. They need the information that you will care. And I was told by East German people, East German refugees, East German relatives of mine later, that the best encouragement for the East German movement to freedom was when there was some real support from the outside world. Some people who care and some people who spoke up against Honecker at that time. So there is a need for some government to speak up against Kim Jong-il.
Unfortunately, that uses up Mr. Silva's time. Madame Deschamps, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 5 minutes is a very short time to ask numerous questions that come to mind. And I'm quite outraged by hearing your testimony, Dr. Volotzen. From where I'm sitting and coming from a society of welfare and wealth, I fail to understand how there are still children who are dying from hunger and malnutrition in the world. And we can send rockets to space, so I'm quite astounded. My main question that comes to mind, Mr. Lee, it is said that the International Committee, including the UN, have provided support tools to North Korea, and North Korea has always refused the assistance given by the international community. To date, how come the international community has not taken action, has not made reprisals against North Korea, which remains a delinquent state neighboring South Korea and China? There must be external supports. There must be friendly forces that support North Korea in this moment of a delinquent state based on terrorism, a population that is maintained in hunger.
I'm not sure I understand your question. First of all, in North Korea, publicly they profess they have military-first policy. You know, everything you have, it goes to the military first. So when the International Committee is providing aid, whether it is food or clothes, whatever, we send them in the name of humanitarianism. But upon receiving the aid by the North Korean regime, it becomes military aid. Everything goes to the military first. There's no remainder at all to go to the suffering people. And that's the dilemma. Still, we have to care about the starving people. It's a real dilemma. And I meet a lot of refugees who came from North Korea that some said, many of them, most of them, I would say, we shouldn't provide aid, which will be fed by the military. But some, like Mrs. Kim witnessed the other day, if the aid is to be made, it should be in the form of like not ordinary rice, but something is something like food to be fed by the animals. Because ordinary people there, they eat not ordinary rice, but animal food. So some suggest that that's what they suggest. I haven't been there, but I hear a lot about this.
Mais est-ce que l'aide humanitaire transite directement?
But is humanitarian assistance given directly to the government, or are there civil society organizations, NGOs from other countries that can distribute the food to the population who most need it?
Everything belongs to the regime. In other words, the people are Kim Jong-il's property. Food, land, everything belongs to Kim's family. So, institution, there's no social society, civil society there like we have here. So universities, hospitals, any institution belongs to the state, and the state belongs to Kim Jong-il. So totally different from our perspective. One example, she told me, in North Korea, you have no right to commit suicide. I mean, in the socialist system, the people are fed by the government. If the government is unable to provide the food, the people should have the right of economic activity, basically, like trading or farming in the backyard. They don't have that right. They do, but officially it is not allowed. In the most in desperate situation, they decide to suicide, and some commit suicide. Suicide in North Korea is a crime of anti-state. Why? Because human beings are unit of labor, not human beings. So it's an asset of the state. You cannot destroy the asset of the state, your life. And then if committed suicide, it's a crime and you should be punished. The people committed suicide already gone. Who is responsible? The surviving members of family. So you cannot, the government doesn't feed the people. They don't have right of basic economic activity. You don't have the right to commit suicide. Only thing is you have to die. You have to starve to death. That's the only right you have. That's the situation.
Mr. Marsden, please.
Well, Mr. Lee, we've worked together now for a couple of years in this, and I have a great respect for the Council on Human Rights for North Korea, and of course for yourself, and putting forward the ideas that you have over the last couple of years. We've worked together on media conferences and that. I want to mention a bill that was put in by Peter Julian of the NDP. Mr. De Volen's put in a bill, and this one was calling on China to authorize the safe passage of refugees from North Korea through to South Korea through their territory. And we know the stories repeatedly, the stories of the repatriation back to North Korea and what happens there. Doctor, your passion for what you're doing is very heartfelt, and you're not to blame, and nobody's to blame in this generation with what happened in the previous generations in Germany. And from what I see here today, you have done yeoman's service to the people of North Korea by identifying and putting forward the situation there. In you spoke about the starvation, and because you raised the previous death camps, is there any indication at all of anything outside of benign neglect, and there's no such thing as actual death camps with the predisposition that people are going to die there, or a system of putting them to death, would be my first question. The other thing I'll try to get to as quickly as I can, you have expectations of this committee. You know from yesterday's testimony that the Universal Periodic Review of Canada did put forward particular recommendations and some substantial ones. I must give them credit on that. Beyond that, the next thing that you're proposing is a full motion of the Parliament of Canada. Do you have any way of measuring or knowing about the results of the UPR review of Canada? Was there any response over there at the time to that? And what's the expectation of the outcome of our motion?
First of all, I would thank you all that you are listening. That's the first thing. Such a hearing is maybe the first step to do something. I cannot refer about the death camps. I cannot refer about anything. As I told you, when you're staying inside North Korea, you know nothing. You know only the surface. You never have any clue about what Ms. Kim endured. So she is the expert about that. I only learned afterwards when I met the refugees, but maybe Ms. Kim can again make some statement about the death camps. I would like you to get more hearings, and this motion and whatever is on the way now, we fully respect. I'm happy that Canada is doing something. But then I heard yesterday about a new Holocaust museum here in Winnipeg. I once was in Washington, I told you, in the Holocaust Museum there, and there was a special exhibition about Sudan, what's going on in Sudan. Maybe one day there will be some exhibition about what's going on in the Middle East and Egypt nowadays. Then I had the idea yesterday, hey, so many students going through your parliament and on a visit tour. Why not have a special exhibition about North Korea and this new Holocaust Museum special exhibition? Then the North Koreans need information. So we went to the North Korean border from South Korea, Panmunjom, near Panmunjom, and we inflated balloons, simple balloons, and the wind was blowing to the north. They carried little radios, cheap Chinese production, and the people were happy. As I told you, my translator, he asked me if I can give him a radio from China. They are listening to this information. They are needy for information about the outside world. And then my dream was always that it would become true what I told the North Koreans when they kicked me out. I told them, one day we will meet again at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. And maybe that's also a way. We need somebody who will maybe do the same like with Milosevic in The Hague. We need somebody who will take Kim Jong-il accountable. He's still there. He is the head of state, and he is committing genocide against his own people. And therefore, I beg you, do something stronger.
If I may add, okay, there's a movement here in Canada to building a tribute monument. It's the name of the organization, Tribute to Liberty, where I belong to. There should be some monument in Ottawa. And one more thing I want to add is most people in despair. They say, "Oh, there's no way to solve the problem." Like, not only because of the characteristics of the North Korean region, but they have a good brother like China. We cannot deal with China effectively because it's too much for us. Okay. One thing, I mean, world is changing, and in China, in North Korea, we have a generation. New generation in China, I heard, now they care, the people, the younger generation in China, they care as to how they are viewed by outside world. Up to now, they didn't have such a sense, but now they begin to think, oh, how we are viewed by Western countries. That means we have a chance. We can ask the Chinese government to do something about it. And I think if we keep on asking, then they will listen. And in North Korea, I hear from one of the refugees that the North Korea regime depends on military because military is isolated. They are so faithful to the regime because they don't know, they don't have any outside information. But the soldiers in North Korean army now are the generations who experienced in their childhood the starvation period in late 90s. They knew their grandmother, grandfather, parents died of starvation. So, if anything happens, they can act against the regime, even though they are in the army. Okay? And nowadays, we are talking about Egyptian crisis. Okay? There are some similarities or differences between North Korea and Egypt. If you keep the dictatorship so long, something will happen eventually. And if you don't do in advance, if you don't prevent it in advance, the result, the crisis, the chaos will be very costly. So we should do as early as possible. And in North Korea, there are many cell phones now. And the well-to-do people, they are using these communications. And even high officials in the military, they are defecting to South Korea these days. Publicly, the South Korean government does not reveal that because it will provoke the North Korean regime. So there are many high officials in the army and in the bureaucracy. There are people defecting to South Korea. We don't know, but there are many. So there are chances. But the thing is, the sudden change shouldn't be a form of explosion. I would say it should be an implosion. It should be brought down nicely. And the international community should prepare for the change sooner or later. And Canada is, I think, one of the leading countries to do that.
Okay. I let that round go considerably over time. I believe that Mr. DeVolen, you'll be asking the final questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also want to thank the witnesses, Dr. Bullertson and Mr. Lee, for being here today, and for Mrs. Kim for coming back. I've also had the opportunity to get to know you two gentlemen over the last few months. I have two questions. And the first is, we're kind of talking about two things. There are the things that are actually happening inside North Korea, and where these gulags are essentially kind of prisons within larger the whole country's a prison, and the gulags are prisons within prisons. And many of us have wondered what we can possibly do to influence North Korea, either the government directly or the people, so that they can do something, and you have given us some good ideas today. The second thing we've talked about, though, is what happens when a North Korean escapes. And the obvious place, the easy place, is China, because it's a land border. And so we've talked about maybe trying to put some pressure or to get China to deal better with refugee claimants, North Korean citizens who escape into China. When I listened to Mrs. Kim the other day, the most shocking part of her testimony was that after getting out of North Korea, that things could be so bad in China that she could be forced and coerced to go back into North Korea. That to me is a testimony of how frightened and powerless she must have felt while she was in China. So my first question is, my motion and the other motions that have been brought forward are more kind of oriented towards getting China to do something rather than North Korea. I think because we sense that we might be successful with China when we're not going to be successful with North Korea. So do you agree that maybe that's an avenue that we ought to be taking as citizens of the world and political leaders to maybe spend our time focusing on China to improve the plight of those who get out of North Korea, or do you think we're better, there's something we can do directly with North Korea? And I'll ask my second question if I have time.
Okay, I think when we had both people in Vietnam, there was a program called First Asylum Program, whereby like in Cambodia or in Philippines, you have a temporary shelter to take care of the refugees. And from there, the UNHCR can screen whether they are real refugees or not. And if granted, then they have a destination to United States, Australia, Canada, Similar thing. We shouldn't only push the Chinese government to do something about it. We shouldn't condemn them, because China also has some problem with this refugee problem. Like they are saying they are illegal migrants. Some, yes, it's true. So we have to understand their position. So we have to do something to relieve their burden. And one way is first asylum policy, so that we international community can organize alliance or something, and collectively suggest the Chinese government, okay, how about this? It won't hurt you. It will help you. It will help the people suffering, but also help you, China, And why don't we do the same thing? And do you have anything? Okay.
No, I fully agree. Direct China refugee assistance, again, because I'm from Germany, I saw it worked. When the West German government assisted Hungary for opening the border, and Hungary was asked to get a train with all the East German refugees. Imagine a train going all the way through East Germany and then ended up in West Germany. West Germany gave assistance to Hungary to open the border, gave money assistance, logical assistance, how to organize the train and whatever. Make China become the Hungary of the Far East. They can get assistance from the international community. Maybe Germany will take in some North Korean refugees, hopefully Canada, United States, whoever, so that they can be there in a face-saving state nowadays, because so many young Chinese, as Mr. Lee explained, are now concerned about the outside world and the view of the outside world.
Okay. Very briefly, Mr. de Vollen?
Yes, when yesterday we had the opportunity to meet with Prime Minister Harper, and in that meeting, he essentially challenged us, you, to make suggestions and to bring things forward. So you've had 24 hours to think about it. Is there something you'd like to put on the record that you think not only us as parliamentarians, but the actual government of Canada can do immediately and directly dealing with North Korea?
First of all, we met Prime Minister yesterday, briefly. But I think it is a significant event, really, because it may be interpreted that Canada officially recognized the status of refugees, North Korean refugees. In North Korea, fleeing North Korea is an anti-state crime. You are executed, you are imprisoned in the Gulag. But in Canada, officially, the Prime Minister recognize and support the status of refugees. This is a significant event. I think, the effect is great from now on, because one of the head of the state recognized our action as legitimate, and I think that's the beginning. If we have a parliamentary resolution here in Canada That's something really significant too, because so far, United States have a North Korea Human Rights Act. In Japan, very brief resolution. In European Parliament, yes, very brief one. And if Canada joins them, Canada is different really, because they say whatever United States or Japan do about North Korea, oh, that's political plot, because they have keen military economic interest in North Korean, in Korean Peninsula. But Canada, we are independent, we are objective, we are only concerned about human rights. So they respect whatever we do, and I think that will work.
All right. That unfortunately concludes all the time we have for our witnesses today. We are very grateful to all three of you for coming, and that's it. We are dismissed. Thank you.